So there's a lot I want to share. I'm going to try to move quickly yet clearly. I can talk fast and unclearly when I get excited. I'm so happy to be here. I thank Chip, Sally, and the whole team for graciously inviting me to share the New Consensus perspective on the Green New Deal. As you know, New Consensus is an organization, one of the leading organizations that's framing, promoting, and shaping the Green New Deal. And so we're happy to be here to share that. So again, I'm Devon Drummer, co-founder and executive director of New Consensus. About a year ago, I was an organizer. Now I'm a co-founder of a think tank. I think that's a really good thing for America. Speaking of adding our voice, I just want to make one quick little note. I want to congratulate the team for pulling in a pretty broad range and a rich diversity of thought and perspective at this particular forum. It's impressive and it's very inspiring, and I'm going to have a really long night at the bar tonight because of it. But I also want to encourage the Institute to consider other types of diversity that can make this dialogue even more rich, deeper, and more robust. So somebody asked about who was a millennial in the room, and about 6 people raised their hands. We can get more millennials, younger people, right, who are leading this moment that we're in. We can also see some more black and brown people who can add more texture and richness to this conversation as well. So that's not an indictment, it's just an encouragement. So we can all help the Institute find those people. We know who they are, right? So we can commit ourselves to do that. I hope to be invited back as well. So I'm here to talk about the Green New Deal, and I'll talk about the Green New Deal in 3 different ways. The Green New Deal as a mobilization, the Green New Deal as a series of moonshots, and the Green New Deal as a movement. And I'm going to do this by showing some old photos. So in 1941, the United States had the industrial capacity to produce about 3,000 planes. They were craft products. You know, you would build it by hand like you would weave a basket. They weren't mass-produced like cars. So when President Roosevelt wanted 189,000 warplanes for the war effort, people thought he was being unrealistic and not for no fault of their own, like they were quite justified. The U.S. simply did not have the industrial capacity to build the materiel and munitions needed to wage a sustained and successful war effort abroad. So Roosevelt tapped some business leaders to organize American industry for the war effort. These leaders assessed the capacity of factories all over the country and worked out how to retool those factories to make what they needed to win the war. The financial capital needed for this retooling did not come from the banks entirely. It came from the federal government. In some cases, the federal government literally built factories and then contracted companies to run those factories to build the things that we needed to win the war abroad. And you got that factory for free, but you had to pay your workers, right? So you got to extract a little bit of exchange there. And when it was all said and done, a country that could only produce 3,000 warplanes at the beginning of the war produced 300,000 by the end of the war. And at New Consensus, we see the Green New Deal as a World War II scale mobilization of all the resources of our country. Not just money, but our industrial capacity, our ingenuity, and our financial capital as well. All of the resources of our country to transition to a clean energy economy that is more just, more prosperous, and more sustainable on all fronts. This transition must be just and it must be equitable. The Green New Deal proposes a set of solutions that match the scale, scope, and speed of the climate crisis. I'm sure this list will make my evening very long. I'll be holding court in the bar. Upgrade every building in the country to the highest levels of energy efficiency, air quality, and water quality. I was woken up this morning by a call, right? Like I don't really set an alarm clock. I just wake up at like 5 or 6, right? And I was woken up by a friend of mine who lives in Newark. And he called me. He was like, "Damon, we need a Green New Deal in Newark. We got to get this thing done." Right? Like it's ridiculous, right? So upgrade every building in this country for the highest levels of energy efficiency, air quality, and water quality. We have lead in pipes not only in Flint, but communities all over the country. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, we need money to do that. We need to upgrade our infrastructure to be more resilient. We need to accelerate the adoption of clean and renewable energy. You know the list. Research, develop, and deploy the technologies to decarbonize heavy industry and position America, our country, to be a world leader in clean manufacturing. We should not be exporting liquefied natural gas as our geopolitical strategy for the future. That's ridiculous. This mobilization will create new industries and substantially grow our economy, so it's absolutely necessary that we design the mobilization to prioritize those who, one, who have disproportionately borne the burden of an extractive economy, and of course, two, those who will be most affected by a transition away from fossil fuels. The Green New Deal will leave no worker, no community behind. That is absolutely necessary. The greatest generation mobilized this country to beat fascism abroad. It is our task, in our day, in our time, to mobilize our country to meet the imminent and existential threat of climate change. That is our moment. That's our task. So that's the Green New Deal as a mobilization. We could also talk about the Green New Deal as a series of moonshots. This is my favorite photo because, again, 50 years ago we celebrated, or rather experienced, a successful moonshot. The United States, and just before I go into that, I spent most of my childhood, I'm an Army brat. My father served in the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Hood, right? So, spent most of my childhood wanting to be an astronaut, right? And so I was inspired by Kennedy's moon mission speech. He said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade because that goal will serve to organize and measure our country's energies and skills." The moonshot wasn't just about science. It was about survival. It was about proving that the American system could beat and outlast the Soviet system, and that the U.S. actually spent, and this is all kind of the fact that we made it happen, is interesting because we spent most of the space race behind the Soviet Union. I feel like we're in a similar situation now, right? The Green New Deal is a series of technology moonshots. And like the space race before, the Green New Deal is a great national effort, an exercise in survival. It goes without saying that decarbonizing every sector of our economy will be extraordinarily difficult. In most cases, the technologies we need are either in their infancy or simply don't exist. But that is not an excuse. That cannot stop us. We must throw the entire might of American ingenuity at these problems, massive investments of public capital to a network of research universities and research teams to solve the most pressing technology challenges of our day. I'm actually shocked at times to say, we can't do it. I don't want to live in a country that says we can't do it. This is not nice to have. It's a matter of survival. Which brings me to the next point, which is the Green New Deal as a movement. We've talked about the Green New Deal as a mobilization, and I'm trying to get to the end so we can do maybe 1 or 2 questions. We've talked about the Green New Deal as a series of moonshots, but I'd like to talk about the Green New Deal as a movement, and maybe more appropriately, a combination of movements. Environmental movement, the racial justice and economic justice and labor movements, the environmental justice and climate justice movements, and so on. The Green New Deal is admittedly capacious. Some say it's absolutely too big. I was critiqued last week that we didn't know what problem we were trying to solve. It's interesting, but we rejoin that by saying that there is no way to truly transition to a zero-carbon economy without interrogating and challenging the logic of an economy that exploits people and extracts from the earth. Economist Mariana Mazzucato says that behind the climate crisis, behind the economic crises, behind these crises is a crisis in thinking. So yes, a movement is afoot, a movement that is building a new consensus. And what do I mean by a new consensus? I'm going to slide to another slide. This is the only text that I'm sharing today, on purpose. In his letter from Birmingham jail, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. addressed his fellow clergymen who were concerned about his activism. They agreed with his aims, but they disagreed with his methods. Breaking the racial caste should happen more slowly, more gradually, more naturally. In a word, the American people weren't ready for all of this change. And in this letter, he talked about the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. A thermometer measures temperature, he said. A thermostat sets the temperature. And if we can adapt this for our purposes, if we are acting as a thermometer in this moment, we are recording and reflecting popular opinion of what's possible and what we can do about climate change. If we are acting as thermostats, we are setting public opinion. We are transforming public opinion. We are creating popular opinion to get the job done. The Green New Deal requires a new political and economic consensus. This consensus says that we will no longer be duped by the mythic invisible hand of the market. A consensus that recognizes that the public sector, our government, of the people, by the people, for the people, our government has a fundamental role in shaping markets. This is why there are lobbyists, right? Right? So we can shape energy markets to serve the interests of society. We can shape labor markets to serve the interests of society. We can shape financial markets to serve the interests of society. So the Green New Deal proposes a set of solutions that meet the scale of the crisis we've created for ourselves. Its comprehensiveness is its power. The Green New Deal is a World War II scale mobilization of all the resources of our country. The Green New Deal is a series of technology moonshots, and the Green New Deal is a movement. It will be brought forth and sustained by an enduring alignment of people who know we deserve clean air, clean water, and good food, right? Workers who know we deserve pay that can sustain a family so that the American dream can be realized. Scientists and researchers who know they can lead us into the light, entrepreneurs of all types, even investors who are looking for good investments with guaranteed returns, right? Mobilizations, moonshots, movements. To me, that's the story of America, and that's why, even in these strange times, I can't think of anything more inherently American than the Green New Deal. We have 3 minutes for a couple questions.
Yeah.
And I'm ever the organizer, so if you want to talk, just send me an email too so we can connect, because I know there's a lot of wisdom in the room. Just a quick note on how we're designed as a think tank. We're going to be very small. We're executing research partnerships with the leading research organizations and thinkers and scientists, et cetera, policymakers in the country who have the answers that we're looking for, and sometimes we push them a little further, and they enjoy the push. And so that's how we're crowdsourcing the Green New Deal. Yes?
Yeah, the Green New Deal was put forward by Senator Ed Markey and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So my question is, how can the Green New Deal transcend the boundaries of politics and start to engage both sides of the aisle in order to bring our country together in some sort of consensus?
So this is why we call it new consensus. In every conversation that I've had with like farmers and just folks who are, I would say normal everyday Americans, I think the Green New Deal is impossible in the current kind of polarized political system that we have, right? The Green New Deal has to be constructed in a way that a broader swath of the public can see that they have a stake in this new American future. We, as a city, we have labor extract work from gains and gives 90% of the growth to investors, right? So these are market rules that have been shaped by lobbyists of major corporations and the financial industry, et cetera. So we take the market very seriously. And the market, as currently constructed, has not served us well. And so government's role during market failure is to come in and reshape markets for the good of society. We'd love to have a follow-up conversation with you on this. And again, we're talking about growing the economy. My time is up, actually.
Yes.
So thank you. My apologies. Thank